background anyway.
Welcome to this supplement to our study of the story. We're going to be looking at the culture, the history, and the geography of the areas that we're studying in our own personal studies. This little supplement assumes that you've read the accounts and that you've spent some time thinking about them, and maybe you've even been to your small group already. So let's take a look at what's being talked about in this first chapter of the story. It begins, of course, with, in the beginning, God created. He created the heavens and the earth, and it goes on to tell about how he created it. But the Bible is not the only story of creation. In fact, almost every culture has a story of creation. I thought you might be interested in what some of them say. For instance, listen to this one from the Chinese culture. Long, long ago, when heaven and earth were still one, the entire universe was contained in an egg-shaped cloud. All the matter of the universe swirled chaotically in that egg. Deep within the swirling matter was Pangu, a huge giant who grew into chaos. For 18,000 years he developed and slept in the egg. Finally, one day he awoke and stretched, and the egg broke to release the matter of the universe. The lighter, purer elements drifted upwards to make the sky and heavens, and the heavier, impure elements settled downwards to make the earth. And it goes on. How about this one from the Babylonian culture? In the beginning, neither heaven nor earth had names. Apsu, the god of fresh waters, and Tiamat, the goddess of the salt oceans, and Mamu, the god of the mist that rises from both of them, were still mingled as one. There were no mountains, there were no pasture lands, and not even a reed marsh could be found to break the surface of the waters. It was then that Apsu and Tiamat parented two gods, and then two more who outgrew the first pair. These further parented gods until Ea, who was the god of rivers and was Tiamat and Apsu's great-grandson, was born. Ea was the cleverest of the gods, and with his magic Ea became the most powerful of the gods, ruling even his forebears. It then goes on to tell about how land was created and the sky and other things. Totally different culture than the Chinese. How about my particular background, Scandinavian, the Norse legends? In the beginning of time there was nothing, neither sand nor sea nor cool waves. Neither the heaven nor earth existed. Instead, long before the earth was made, Nephilim was made, and in it a spring gave rise to 12 rivers. To the south was Muspel, a region of heat and brightness guarded by Sept, a giant who carried a flaming sword. To the north was Frigid, a name I can't pronounce, where the rivers froze and all was ice, where the sparks and warm winds of Muspel reached the south side of Frigid Lake. The ice thawed and dripped, and from the drips thickened and formed the shape of a man. His name was Ymir, the first of and ancestor of the frost giants. It goes on. I could read others of the Hopi account, and countless others are trying to give their understanding of how the world was created. But God revealed for us how he created it in the scriptures. And as you read the story, you'll get a really good picture of what happened. Now, after he'd created, he made man and he made woman, and he put them in the Garden of Eden. It was a place lush and beautiful, a place where he would come and walk with them every day. And scientists have tried to figure out where the Garden of Eden might have been. Nobody knows for sure. But if you look at this map over here, many people think that it's at the end of the Tigris-Euphrates River, near where it comes into the Persian Gulf. Right in this area right here, it would have been a very lush place. Incredible waters and lots of growth would have been happening. And many people think that Eden was right in this particular area. Let's take a look now at a modern-day map and see if we can identify some of these places. Following Adam and Eve's disobedience in the garden, God kicked them out. And they left, which was been down here in modern-day Iraq near Kuwait, would have been the Garden of Eden. And if you were going to leave the Garden of Eden, the question is, where would you go? Now, this assumes that the geography is the same before the flood as it is after the flood, and that's not necessarily true. But trying to figure this out, if you go either direction, you're going to run into arid, dry lands. So if you're not in a lush place, you need to follow the waterways in order to keep near food sources. So most likely, Adam and Eve and their kids traveled up this Mesopotamian valley, if you will, following the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Now, nobody knows for sure where Noah lived, but they think that he lived near what was going to be eventually Babel and Babylon. So in this area here, a man by the name of Noah came to live, and God told him he was going to destroy the world by flood because the people had become rebellious and evil beyond imagination. Now, you might think that the Bible has the only account of the flood, but listen to these things. Native global flood stories are documented as history or legend in almost every region on earth. Old world missionaries reported their amazement at finding remote tribes already possessing legends with tremendous similarities to the Bible accounts of the worldwide flood. HMS Bellamy in Moon's Myth and Men estimates that altogether there are over 500 flood legends worldwide. Ancient civilizations such as China, Babylonia, Wales, Russia, India, America, Hawaii, Scandinavia, Sumatra, Peru, and Polynesia all have their own versions of a giant flood. Now, most likely some kind of a flood event happened, probably much like the biblical account. So if Noah and his family were at what is presently Babylon, in this area, which would have been a very rich area in terms of fertile land, the waters come as the world is destroyed through water, and then the waters begin to recede. The scripture says that the ark came to rest in the Ararat Mountains, which is right up over here, just above present-day Iraq in Turkey. The Ararat Mountains, it doesn't say the Mount Ararat, there is a Mount Ararat, but the Ararat Mountains are the headwaters for the Tigris and for the Euphrates, and they probably landed someplace up in that particular area. Now, as the waters receded and they began to leave the ark, where would they probably go? Most likely, they would follow the rivers down, because where the rivers were, that's where food was. They would follow the rivers. If they go north, they hit more mountains. If they go west, they do have some possibilities there. If they go east, they are in the middle of the mountain. So they probably come south and southeast and follow the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and they come back down into the regions where they were living before. They wouldn't know that, but they come back here, and civilization begins to spread. Now, in our book, The Story, that's where it ends. But it's actually supposed to cover the first 11 chapters, and there's a very interesting thing that happens called the Tower of Babel. Now, the Tower of Babel is most likely right here where I have this circled, right where Babylon, or very near where Babylon was and the ruins are. In this particular place, civilization had come together, and out of their pride, they tried to erect a monument to themselves that would rival God's authority. God comes, he confuses their language, and they wind up being scattered over much, much more of the earth. Those are some of the culture, some of the history, some of the geography that affect the story as we read it. I encourage you to continue to read and to be able to talk with people as we do this journey called The Story. Thank you.